So before we get into the iceberg, I just want to start off with an apology because it took me way longer to come out with part 2 than I thought it would. I don't want to make excuses, but for the last part of 2022, I was dealing with a lot of personal stuff and mental health stuff, and I just wasn't in the headspace to work on this video at all. But I'm doing much better. Hopefully we have left all of that in 2022, and I have a lot of ideas for videos that I'm really excited to share with you guys. I definitely have like a renewed interest and passion for this channel, and obviously we're going to start off by this video, which is part 2 of the Gorillaz Iceberg, starting in 3, 2, 1.
Hi guys, happy new year, happy 2023. Just so you guys know, this is part 2 of the Gorillaz Iceberg, so if you haven't seen part 1 yet, I will link it down in the description. I wouldn't say that you need to have watched part 1 to be able to understand what's going on in this part, but it would be nice to have that context, so I would go ahead and watch part 1 first. Okay, I don't want to waste a ton of time with the intro, so we are just going to get right into it. Layer 3. So now that we've covered all of the more basic background information, now is where we're going to be getting into some of the stuff that's really obscure that most Gorillaz fans, I assume, would not have heard of. Steely Dan cover. Back in 2007, the album Maestros of Cool was released. The album was a tribute to the band Steely Dan and features covers of their work. One cover, FM by Nathan Haynes, features Damon Albarn, who is credited as 2D. The track was originally featured on Haynes' 2003 album, Squire for Hire. Drunk Noodle. This refers to an unofficial animation of a drunk noodle dancing. That's really it. Heartbeat/Crazy Golf. Heartbeat is an unreleased song from Phase 5 that, as of now, has only been heard in the Reject False Icons documentary. Some people think this track is Founding Fathers, which I talked about in part 1, but that's unconfirmed. Of Man. The Book of Man was part of the story of Phase 3 that was eventually scrapped. Basically, it was a book that Murdoch found on Plastic Beach, which told the history of the entire world, I guess, but with Murdoch present at many major historical events, like the Great Fire of London. This was meant to reveal that Murdoch is actually an immortal being who's been around since the beginning of time. Side note, this also offers an explanation as to why he's green. As he's been alive so long, he's essentially a walking, rotting corpse. Hot, right? The Book of Man, according to Murdoch, went all the way up to the end of days, which all tied into Plastic Beach, and more specifically, Murdoch himself. The acronym MAN, or M-A-N, stands for his full name, Murdoch Alphonse Nichols, or rather what used to be his full name before he changed his middle name to Faust, but now is not the time for that story. The Book of Man was actually meant to be published as a real book alongside another book titled Under a Hail of Plastic Bullets, which would reveal that Plastic Beach was acting as the plug for a drain that would drag everything into it, causing the end of the world, I guess. Cass Brown, who wrote these books, actually still has the drafts for them, but as of now we haven't seen them. Sal. When Gorillaz was still in its very early stages, the bassist was going to be not Murdoch, but some guy named Sal. All we really have of him are these sketches, but he seems like a cool guy. Tank Girl. I feel like this is an entry better suited for Layer 1, but Tank Girl is a comic book series created by Alan Martin and Jamie Hewlett. It has a pretty big cult following and was even adapted into a film, which I've heard is pretty bad. It's Jamie's most popular project outside of Gorillaz. Basically, Tank Girl is to Jamie as Blur is to Damon. Damon dissed Kanye. Are we really surprised? So, back in 2015, before all of this more recent stuff happened, Kanye released the single 4 or 5 Seconds featuring Rihanna and Sir Paul McCartney. Before the single came to be, Damon allegedly texted Paul warning him not to work with Kanye. Obviously, he didn't listen. Damon later said, quote, "Should I do the voice? I'm not going to do the voice. Do not get me started on Kanye West. He trapped Paul McCartney. I have a problem with this abusive collaboration. Kanye West thinks only about Kanye West. Uses a name to make headlines, to say, McCartney is in my song. Kanye West is one of those people who feed on other people." I could cap this off with a joke at Kanye's expense, but I obviously don't even want to touch that whole situation because we don't have time for it, and I don't know if it's going to get me demonetized, so instead I'll recommend this video by Pinely, that I think everyone should watch. Also, why did I say demonetized? I meant to say flagged. I don't make money off this channel. Think Tank. Think Tank is a Blur album released in 2003. It doesn't have much to do with Gorillaz other than the fact that a booklet that came along with the album revealed the title for the then upcoming Gorillaz film Celebrity Harvest. Also, the cover art of the album was done by Banksy, which I think is pretty cool. Carousel. I mentioned this back in part 1, but the album Plastic Beach was originally envisioned as a project called Carousel. Carousel was supposed to be an anthology film consisting of several short films set to music. Each short was supposed to represent a different stage of life as well as a different aspect of life in Britain. It was described by Damon Albarn as a cross between Gorillaz and his other band, The Good, the Bad, and the Queen. And listen, not to go off on a tangent, but I love The Good, the Bad, and the Queen. Their self-titled album is one of my favorite albums of all time and my biggest inspiration. Everything about my online presence, from my artwork to my art style to the color palette I use, is kind of an homage to that album. And I love Gorillaz, obviously, so Carousel is something I really wish had come to fruition. The project obviously was scrapped, including 70 songs. That's 70 songs Damon wrote for the soundtrack, but certain elements of it did end up being used. For example, when the short films were all supposed to be set on a pier, which eventually made it into the Plastic Beach model, and the short film representing the final stage of life, death, became the origin of the Boogeyman, the antagonist of Phase 3. But unfortunately, most of the project was thrown out, both because it was too ambitious and because EMI, Gorillaz' record label at the time, refused to fund the project. So Carousel goes down in history as yet another piece of Gorillaz media that could have been amazing, but since has been lost to time. Film music. Film music is an instrumental B-side that was featured on the CD release of Tomorrow Comes Today. As the title implies, the song was supposed to be featured in the film Celebrity Harvest, but when the film was scrapped, so was the film music. Beats. Pretty sure this is just a reference to the Beats headphones 2D wears in the Humility video. Debunked with Murdoch. So during Phase 6, Murdoch's official Twitter account ran a series called, obviously, Debunked, where he would provide commentary on each episode of Song Machine. It's called Debunked because Murdoch is basically trying to clear his name throughout. No, of course he didn't try to poison Damon. No, of course he wasn't crying as a result of built-up shame and regret over the way he treated his bandmates in the past due to his own egomania, alcoholism, and tendency to self-sabotage. And he doesn't look like Bert! There was also a special called Russell Debunks, where Russell basically debunked everything Murdoch just debunked. Debunked? Debunked? I hope I'm saying that right. Foo Action / Get the Freebies. Foo Action is a TV pilot based on the comic strip Get the Freebies, which was created by Jamie Hewlett. Foo Action was supposed to be developed into a 6-part series, but it was cancelled. The music was composed by Damon Albarn, of course, and Phil Cornwell, the voice of Murdoch, also had a role. As for Get the Freebies, the comic strip follows a crime-fighting duo who fight mutants called Freebies on the streets of London. I don't know, I truly haven't read much of it or watched Foo Action, so if you have, let me know in the comments if it's good or not. Dub Dum. This was a song released as part of the soundtrack to the game MTV Music Generator 2. The song features Sweetie Irie, who also appeared on a remix of Clint Eastwood, so the song is assumed to have been made sometime during Phase 1. Aluminum. Aluminum, or rather, Aluminium, is the name of the original demo for the D-Sides track Stop the Dams, meaning it's a demo of a demo. It was played live once back in 2006, and just like every other demo on this Iceberg, we'll probably never hear it in full. Art Asylum. Art Asylum is a company that planned to make the first ever Gorillaz figures all the way back in 2002. However, these figures were cancelled and eventually repurposed into the Kid Robot figures. Crashing Down / White Helmets. Okay, take a shot of water for every entry about an unreleased song. Crashing Down is an unreleased song from Phase 3 that was never released in any official capacity, but was featured in White Helmets, a documentary about the White Helmets, a Syrian volunteer defense force. I haven't seen this documentary, but it was critically acclaimed and won an Oscar. But that doesn't mean anything. Let's Get Dirty. Gross. This was the first song that Gorillaz actually remixed for another artist. Specifically, this is a song by Redman, who we mentioned before, which was later remixed by Gorillaz. PLC Starshine. This entry refers to a very, very early version of the song Starshine that featured rap group Phi Life Cypher, or PLC. It was recorded in 2001, but wasn't released until a decade later on PLC's official SoundCloud. Vestax. This was a Gorillaz-themed record player being sold by Vestax around 2005, and this might come as a shock to you, but it's super expensive. GSS. GSS stands for Gorillaz Sound System, which is a group of DJs created by Remy Kabaka Jr., who is basically the third member of Gorillaz. It's basically a party system that combines mixes of Gorillaz songs with visuals from their videos. They debuted in 2007 and eventually disbanded after Remy officially joined the band after a decade of voicing Russell. Fun fact, attending a GSS show and seeing the crowd's reaction was what inspired Damon and Jamie to make a third album after Carousel fell through. Jaguar ARG. I cannot believe we've gotten this far without even mentioning the Gorillaz app. I've mentioned the Gorillaz website like a bunch of times, but in 2017 there was an app that used alternate and virtual reality to show you around the Spirit House. In the garage, there was a code-breaking challenge which Jaguar actually used to recruit engineers. It's kind of like that cicada thing from a while back, but less creepy. If you guys don't remember that, sorry, I don't have time to explain it. I can't find any images online, but I remember specifically it was covered in binary code. It was that image of Noodle, the one from the album cover, and there were like ones and zeros all over, or maybe it was just a bunch of numbers. Shoot, now I don't remember. Anyways, I obviously never even begun to figure out how to crack it, but I'm sure someone out there did. Severed Head in Machine Bites. This sounds super dark and scary, but I promise it's not. Basically, during Phase 6, between episodes, there were machine bites, which were like snippets of conversations between the members of the virtual band. And in the fourth bite, a demo version of the song Severed Head can be heard in the background. Journey to the West. I truly have no idea why this one isn't talked about more, because it's one of the only other projects Damon and Jamie collaborated on outside of Gorillaz. Journey to the West is a play based on a novel from the 16th century. Damon and Jamie collaborated with Chinese opera director Chen Shi-chung. I'm like 70% sure I pronounced that right. If not, oh my god, I am so sorry. To develop the music and visuals for the play, the plot follows a monkey named Monkey and his quest for immortality. Mr. Softy's Balloon Race. This is another unreleased song that you used to be able to hear on the Kong Studios website during Phase 2. Canonically, 2D wrote it for Russell to cheer him up after noticing he was depressed after losing his best friend Del. This is probably one of my favorite unreleased songs just because of the lore behind it. Gorditas. This entry refers to a parody animation posted by a YouTube channel named Grupo Escomic. The video pretty much looks the same as the Clint Eastwood video, but the characters are dressed in stereotypical Mexican clothing. Again, it's not official, so I don't really know why it's on the Iceberg. SM Live Doc. SM here stands for Song Machine, so Song Machine Live was a series of performances of Song Machine recorded live. It was re-released in theaters a year later. Side note, maybe I'm just inobservant and stupid, but I always thought this re-release was kind of a scam. Like, from what I remember, it was being marketed as a completely different thing, to the point where I considered buying tickets even though I had bought tickets to the live stream in 2020, but maybe I just missed something. Toy Stylo. Do you guys remember G Club from the previous video? If not, G Club was the official Gorillaz fan club on Facebook where people could receive special benefits like merch and early access to concert tickets. The group was later rebranded as Subdivision, though the promise of exclusives stayed the same. One of these exclusives was supposed to be a mini Stylo toy car, but Gorillaz couldn't secure the rights with Chevrolet and the deal ultimately fell through. Kong Solar EP. A Solar Collaboration is the name of an EP released by Gorillaz and Eon as part of Kong Solar Studios. It was basically this whole idea of a mini Kong that made music out of solar power. I think the reason this EP is relatively obscure is because the tracks are actually all recorded by guest artists, and to my knowledge 2D doesn't make an appearance at all. Day of the Dead vid. In 2019, Gorillaz released a short animation to celebrate Day of the Dead. It features the band members rendered in beautiful, very expensive-looking CGI as skeleton versions of themselves. Live on Animal Crossing. I'm going to preface this entry with a very embarrassing confession. I don't understand Animal Crossing. I don't mean I don't understand the popularity of it, because as a concept I love it. I mean, I am too dumb to play this game. And I refuse to elaborate further. Anyways, maybe this is common knowledge, but apparently there's an in-game talk show called Animal Talking, and in 2020 on this talk show, Gorillaz performed Valley of the Pagans with Beck. Avatars of Damon and Jamie also gave an interview, and Jamie wore a pretty dress. McCartney 3. Basically, Paul McCartney released his 18th studio album, MC3, in December of 2020. He then recruited a wide range of artists from Phoebe Bridgers, Idris Elba, and obviously Gorillaz, or rather just Damon, to remix songs from the album. Damon remixed the song Long-Tailed Winter Bird, if you're curious. I personally feel like this entry shouldn't be on the Iceberg because it has to do with Damon as a solo artist and not really Gorillaz, but I didn't make the Iceberg. Printworks. Printworks is a venue in London at which Gorillaz gave a live performance of Humans in 2017. That's it. Whiffy Smiffy. In the band's lore, Whiffy Smiffy is the man who first signed Gorillaz all the way back in 1998, and then he was never heard from again. Daffy Duck. In Phase 5, when Murdoch was thrown in jail, he was replaced by the character Ace from the Powerpuff Girls. I'm actually surprised Ace didn't get his own entry back in Layer 1 or 2. Anyways, Jamie mentioned in the documentary Reject False Icons that instead of Ace, he wanted Daffy Duck to play bass for Gorillaz, but couldn't get the rights. Shocking, I know. 2 suitcases of weed. Allegedly, while recording the first album in Jamaica, Damon smoked 2 suitcases of weed. Yep. Google Plus. This entry refers to a Google Plus commercial circa 2011 that uses the Gorillaz song Stop the Dams as background music. Russell's Xbox. So before we had Murdoch promoting Internet Explorer, we had Russell promoting the Xbox way back in 2002. On the old Kong Studios website, if you went into Russell's room, you would find him playing Xbox. Hello America MTV. Okay, this is a fun story. So back in Phase 1, Gorillaz were nominated for an MTV award, and the Real World crew had received a tip-off from someone on the inside that they were going to win. So they spent £20,000 animating an acceptance speech, and then they lost. The reason it's called Hello America MTV is because the acceptance speech begins like this.
Oh, hello America.
Okay, I just got water, so hopefully my voice won't sound disgusting. Swan-shaped scones. This one is another joke/meme within the fandom, which originated from this clip.
No,
We're
did
ready
you?
to go to Quebec, actually.
Yes, we've lost our way. I'm moving on with 2D to St John's in Newfoundland, and we're going to settle there.
And open up a little scone shop.
We're going to have swan-shaped scones.
Prince No Smoke. Okay. Basically, Damon once had the opportunity to work with Prince, the Prince, but he refused to do it because Prince wouldn't let him smoke in the studio. Man, I love Damon, but sometimes he can be a real dick. Happiness Therapy. Happiness Therapy is a song not by Gorillaz but by Diaby, which features vocals from 2D. These vocals were actually taken from Damon's album Demo Crazy, which I mentioned in the previous video. Laura Zombie. Laura Zombie is an artist who makes a lot of Gorillaz fan art, which is amazing. Like, it looks official, so shout out to her for real. Murdoch's Sex Tape. Yep, it is what it sounds like. Audio only, thank God, but it's out there. It's on YouTube. I mean, I'm not saying that I looked it up. I mean, I would, I would never want to hear something like that. I had to. Obviously, for research for this video, I had to look it up and I had to watch it like 12 times. Also, fun fact: the actor who voices Murdoch's partner in this tape is the very same guy who voiced 2D at the time. So, make of that what you will. Congrats, 2Doc shippers. F***ing freaks. Cologne 360. Back in Phase 4, the band live streamed a performance in Cologne in 360 degrees, meaning you can see 360 degrees, like all the way around it, the freezer. On the old Kong Studios website, you could take a look inside the band's freezer. It's disgusting.